Okay, this is going to be a short video about the torch height controller and the Masso. I've just got it working in the right direction, so I'm going to try and just document that real quick. Excuse the condition of my Z-axis right now. I've just finished adding in a pneumatic engraver, and I had to move a bunch of wires around, so they're all kind of a rat's nest now. I haven't tied them all back up. But you can see my hypertherm torch here. I've got the wire hanging off of it is a touch sensor that I've put together. I've just upgraded from a PoLabs torch height controller, which is a voltage controlled controller. Had a lot of problems with it, couldn't get it working right. The thing is really sensitive to noise in the system, so I spent a lot of money and time rewiring my machine, putting in shielded grounded wires, and changing the way the grounds work and all. So far that's working out okay, but I couldn't get that torch height controller working properly, so I've just changed out to a Alcom CAP04 capacitive height sensor, which is what you see on the end of the plasma torch. Here's a better look at it here. The way this system works is it senses the height via this ring around the top of the torch head. It transmits that to the main controller here, which is mounted on the back of the Z-axis. This senses the position relative to the setting in the control, and it will then send a signal back to the breakout board to move the Z-axis up or down when the torch height controller is active. This does this through this DB9 connector. This is shielded Cat5 cable. Everything I have in this system is designed for mounting in a cable chain, so it's all ultra flexible cables. That comes back to the main controller where the Masso is. So here's the breakout board for the Cat4. As you can see, this is the other end of this Cat5 cable attached to the DB9 connector. This is where the Cat4 test point is. So if I want to test down, for instance, I can press that. I can test up, and I can test the in position lights there. Those are in turn wired to the 24 volt power supply. The 24 volt power supply is then what controls the board and the Masso controller. The output wires from the breakout board basically come up in this section here, and they follow over and they enter the Masso controller right here. In this case, my up wire is this white one right here. The torch OK sensor is this one, and then this is my down sensor. I'm using a Hypertherm XP or 45 XP. It has a built-in torch OK signal, so that is also wired into my system through this relay down here. This is the relay that actually turns the plasma on and off, and part of this wiring that I've got back over here near the breakout board goes out to the two pins that the Hypertherm uses to signal that the torch signal is okay. So that loops back out of the breakout boards and into the Masso controller to tell it that the signal is okay. The outside of my wiring control cabinet here, I've put a USB connector on the outside. I've got a spot for the PS2 for the Masso, which has been completely disconnected because there were so many problems with the just the wiring being in place. I just disconnected it from the Masso and abandoned it. Down here is another USB point. These are just extension cables that run back to the Masso. This is a wireless hub so that I'm able to use a wireless mouse and a wireless keyboard. And this is my VGA output for the monitor. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in my USB stick that I just downloaded a test program on. I'm going to be using SheetCam, and I drew a series of lines in Inkscape and then transferred them over to SheetCam and converted them in. I'm using the Masso post. Basically, it's not really altered at this point. I've set some of the heights in it, but I'm basically using the post as it was written at this point for this test. All right, real quickly here, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my main power. This powers up the entire control panel here. And you can see up here on the monitor that the Masso is coming up online. It's all booted up, so I'm going to hit my control stop and reset that. I'm now going to, over here on my wireless keyboard, do the Control-Alt-Delete and home the machine. Okay, so the machine is just homed into position. Now we can see up here on the monitor that if it's focused here, you can see that I've got a 3-inch offset on the X and the Y. The Z is zeroed out and homed. If I transfer you back over here, you can see that the Z from the back side here is actually at the top of the travel. So now I'm going to load the file. So I'm going to use my wireless mouse here and load the file in. I'm going to go to load file. This particular one is called Video Line Test here. I'm going to load that. You can see that comes up on the screen. Now that it's loaded, I'm going to go to the program. This is the latest version of the post. I believe it's 3.40.15. And you can see here that it's actually got some touch buttons that allow us to work on the system as it's running, so it's a little easier to troubleshoot issues. So I'm about ready to go. I'm going to hit rewind, and I'm going to press cycle start. This should go through a touch cycle where it probes down and touches the metal. That will send my touch signal back to the Masso and zero the axis at the bottom. And it should run these lines. I can see right now it's not adjusting the height. It's actually dragging on the metal. So I'm going to pause. I don't know if you could see that or not, but it didn't actually change the height at all. So something's wrong with the post, so I'm going to go back here and just take a peek at it and see what's wrong. Alright, we're back, and I can see right here what I did. So many choices, so little expertise here. I actually had it turned off because I was testing something last night and I forgot to turn it back on. So on the torch height control screen, I'm going to select Chroma Compact THC controller, and I'm going to save it and go back to my program. Back to the load file, and I'm going to hit vidline test again and load it again and go back into my program. What I'm finding with the Masso is if you've run a program and it only partially runs, you almost have to reboot the machine and reload it again, or the remnants of it not completing will mess everything up. So we're going to do that again. I've reloaded the program. Hopefully it'll work for us. If not, I'll have to start again. So I'm back over here, back to my keyboard, Control-Alt-Home. Sorry, only one hand. So here's the torch. You can see the controller is moving up. And it will zero back out. One thing I found with this is that your homing speeds have to be fairly slow with the Masso, or you'll end up overrunning your stops. So it homes pretty slowly. So I'm back to the program here. I'm going to hit rewind again and tell it to control start. Back to the table. The Z is coming down. Unfortunately, I can only get to the back side right now. I've got too much clutter in the way. So here's the torch head getting ready to touch in 0. And you can see that it just adjusted itself up. If you look at the actual sensor, you can see that it's giving it a down signal right now and an in position, and it's telling it to go up as the material slopes upward. So it's working, and even though the material's at a very slight slope, it is actually adjusting right now. And it completed up here, so that time it worked just fine. The problem I was having before was that in the setup screen, the reason it wasn't working, and then I've just since discovered that this was part of my problem with my other height controller, was that in this setup screen here, which is the F1 screen, if you when you put in the plasma, you have a TH1 and a TH2 input. Typically the TH1 is the down input and the TH2 is an up input. But what I discovered through trial and error was that up in this section here, where my z-axis is, to make it work with my table, I had to invert the z-axis. And so that means that these two inputs were actually wrong. Down was up was down. So I switched the two, and now it's working okay. The reason you see that flashing right now is because the height sensor is still actually active over there, even though I'm at the end of the program, and it's flashing that it needs to move up if it was to be active. So you can see that it is sending an input to the system right now.